China fired first in the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. Navy's response was immediate. Nobody saw it coming. And that was exactly the point. In the Strait of Hormuz, in one of the most surveilled and contested stretches of ocean on Earth, a Chinese naval vessel opened fire first. Not a warning shot, not a flare, a weapons release directed at United States Navy assets operating in international waters. The U.S. Navy's response was immediate, overwhelming, and surgical. What followed in the next several minutes reshaped the balance of naval power in the Persian Gulf and sent a signal to every military command center on the planet. This is the full story. The buildup, the trigger, the strike, and the consequences still unfolding right now. The first question every analyst asked when this story broke was simple. What was a Chinese naval vessel doing in the Strait of Hormuz? The answer reveals everything about where global naval competition currently stands. China's naval expansion over the past 15 years has been the most aggressive in modern history. The People's Liberation Army Navy has gone from a coastal defense force to a true blue water navy capable of sustained operations across every major ocean on Earth. New destroyers, new carriers, new submarine fleets. And with expanded capability came expanded presence. Chinese naval vessels now operate in the Indian Ocean, the Mediterranean, the South Atlantic, and increasingly in the Persian Gulf. China has been methodically mapping American naval response patterns in every major strategic waterway on Earth, building a picture of how the United States deploys, how it reacts, and where the gaps are. The Strait of Hormuz was the next data point on that map. The Chinese vessel entered under standard diplomatic cover, a scheduled port visit, routine transit. But the vessel that arrived was not configured for routine. Its electronic warfare suite was active at elevated levels, and its positioning relative to U.S. Navy assets was not incidental. It was deliberate, it was calculated, and someone gave the order. Approximately 40 minutes before the engagement, the Chinese vessel altered course. Gradually, not in a way that immediately triggered alarm, a calculated shift that brought it onto an intercept geometry with U.S. assets in the southern portion of the strait. U.S. tracking systems flagged and assessed the course change, classified it as aggressive but not yet threatening. The Chinese vessel continued its approach. Communications were attempted on standard maritime frequencies. The vessel responded briefly, with language designed to buy time rather than de-escalate. Behind that communication, the targeting systems aboard the Chinese vessel were active, locking, calculating. The communications were theater. At a distance that placed U.S. assets well within the Chinese engagement envelope, the theater ended. The shot was fired. China has invested enormous resources into anti-ship missile technology for one strategic reason. American carriers are defended by the most sophisticated layered defense systems ever built. Getting a weapon through requires either overwhelming that defense with volume or bypassing it with speed that existing systems cannot engage in time. The missile fired in the Strait of Hormuz was a high-velocity sea-skimming weapon, designed to approach at low altitude to delay radar detection, then accelerate to terminal velocity in the final phase where interception becomes exponentially harder. This is not a legacy system. This is the product of decades of research aimed specifically at defeating American naval defenses, and China just tested it in a live operational environment against a real target. Whatever else happened in this engagement, China collected real-world performance data on its most advanced naval weapon. That calculation was built into the decision to fire. The United States Navy's layered defense architecture is built around one core principle: no single point of failure. Every threat that enters the defensive envelope is engaged by multiple overlapping systems simultaneously. The moment the Chinese weapon was detected in flight, everything activated at once. Electronic warfare systems began jamming the missile's guidance frequencies. Close-in weapon systems went active and began tracking. But the primary intercept was handled by the Aegis combat system, the most sophisticated naval air defense architecture ever deployed on a surface vessel. Aegis had been tracking the Chinese vessel's targeting emissions before the shot was even fired. The moment the weapon launched, Aegis already had a firing solution. The interceptor was in the air within seconds. The engagement lasted less than 90 seconds from the Chinese weapons release to neutralization of the threat. The Chinese missile did not reach its target. The U.S. Navy then immediately transitioned from defense to offense. The rules of engagement are clear. When a vessel fires on your forces in international waters, you have the right to eliminate the source of the threat. The counterstrike was launched from multiple platforms simultaneously: surface vessels, aircraft already airborne, and from a position the Chinese vessel had no awareness of, a submarine. The attack was sequenced to overwhelm Chinese defenses, multiple weapons from multiple directions arriving within seconds of each other. A defense system handles one incoming threat with high reliability. Against 5 simultaneous tracks from surface, air, and subsurface, the math becomes impossible. The Chinese vessel attempted to defend. Its systems went to full power. It was not enough. The engagement ended with the Chinese vessel severely damaged and dead in the water, weapons offline, propulsion destroyed. No U.S. assets were lost, no American sailors were killed. The entire exchange, from the first Chinese shot to the end of the counterstrike, lasted under 4 minutes. The synthefire was not made by a ship's captain acting alone. A direct weapons release against United States Navy assets does not happen without authorization from the highest levels of military command. And that authorization does not happen without a strategic calculation behind it. What was China trying to achieve? Chinese military planners operate on a doctrine called gray zone escalation. The concept is straightforward. Establish escalation dominance by demonstrating willingness to cross thresholds the other side believed were uncrossable. China fired first because it calculated that the United States would not respond with lethal force. That political constraints and fear of broader conflict would create hesitation. And inside that hesitation, China wins the narrative. The calculation was wrong. But the fact that China made this calculation at all tells you something critical. Chinese military planners believed hesitation was possible. That belief does not disappear after one failed engagement. It gets revised, recalibrated, and it will inform the next move. Within hours, every major naval power on Earth was reviewing its operational posture. The question being asked in every command center was identical. If China fires on U.S. forces and the U.S. responds with immediate lethal force, what does that mean for every other contested waterway where Chinese and American forces operate in proximity? The South China Sea, the Taiwan Strait, the Philippine Sea. Every one of those theaters just got hotter. Global energy markets reacted immediately. Oil prices moved sharply. Tanker insurance rates in the Persian Gulf spiked to levels not seen in years. When 2 of the world's largest military powers exchange fire in the world's most critical energy choke point, the cost lands on every economy within 24 hours. In Beijing, the public response was controlled and predictable. Official statements characterized the engagement as American aggression. State media assembled the domestic narrative within hours, but behind that posture, serious questions were being asked in private. The operation failed. Chinese anti-ship technology was tested in combat and defeated. And China now faces the international community, having fired first on another nation's military forces in international waters. The Strait of Hormuz engagement is not an endpoint, it is an inflection point, a line crossed that cannot be uncrossed. Watch for these signals in the weeks ahead. First, Chinese naval repositioning. Expect assets in the region to shift, increase in number, and upgrade readiness posture. The message will be that this engagement did not change Chinese operational intent. Second, American reinforcement. Carrier strike group rotations through the region are likely to accelerate. Additional submarine assets may be forward deployed. The response will come through positioning rather than words. Third, diplomatic back channels. Even after a live fire exchange, diplomacy does not stop. It moves underground. Expect quiet contacts through intermediaries to begin establishing what the new parameters look like. Fourth, watch Taiwan. Every calculation that informed this engagement also informs Chinese thinking across the Taiwan Strait. An engagement that tested American resolve and found it firm makes a Taiwan scenario more complex for Chinese planners. The lessons learned here will be applied there. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide, but what was decided in those waters today reaches every contested corner of the globe. China fired first. The United States answered immediately, and the world that exists on the other side of that exchange is not the same world that existed before it. Subscribe now, because the next chapter is already being written, in command centers, in war rooms, and in the waters where the next move is already in motion. This is not over, it is only beginning.